we didn't get it till mid-afternoon today, so Shannon sent it out as soon as we received it.
I didn't see it either.
Okay, no, that's fine, everyone. I just wanted to check it out. I know I was pressing the wrong link for quite a while, so. Okay, but now we're going to watch it. Will you stream it for us, please? Okay, as long as that's taken care of. Okay, it's 6 p.m. Council. If I can get a, okay. Yep, sounds good.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Council, we got the thumbs up to move in at 6 o'clock. Can I get a mover and a seconder to open the meeting, please? Peter and Belinda. That's moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that we do call this special meeting of Council to order on Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m. All those in favor? And any opposed? And that is carried. And our next order of business is to approve the agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please, from Council. Drago, John. And that's moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that Council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor? And that's carried, none opposed. Okay, as always, Council, there's item number 4 on our agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof, declaration of conflict of interest. You can do that now or at any time throughout the meeting if such arises. There being none right now, we will continue on. And we have a presentation tonight, and I want to welcome to our meeting the North Superior Broadband Network plan that's been going on for quite some time. I've been involved with a few of these meetings, so I'm going to welcome Melanie Pilon and Amedeo Bernardi to our meeting. And just a first up, I'm going to assume that we'd like to show the video first, or Amedeo, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure, I was just, thank you very much. And
no problem.
Melanie's on too.
Yeah, I see her name there. There we go.
Yes, I'm here, everyone. Thank you very much for having us.
And we have another part of the team, the executive committee, David Pickett, and I'm going to tease him because he just lost the link. So maybe Melanie, if you can go first, and I'm just going to send it to him. I'd appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. So Mayor Fort and Council, thank you very much for having us. Thanks for Gail for organizing. Now, Mayor, I understood that the group may have wanted to watch the infomercial, and that
yes,
may provide a little background and foundation to the documents that were sent out.
Yes, that would be, yes, we would like the opportunity to, so everyone could view that video, and I'll let you decide when you feel that's best. Do you want us to watch that first, or would you like to continue on first?
I think it's best if we watch that first. I'm not sure if we wanted to do introductions now that David is online, just so Council has a chance to kind of put a face to the names.
Definitely, that would be great.
So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Melanie Pilon, and I'm the Economic Development Officer in the Broadband Champion for the NSRBN. So I work out of Duberville.
Welcome,
And I've
Melanie.
brought with me two. Thank you very much, Mayor Fort. And I've brought with me two very special guests, David Pickett, who is the NSRBN Financial Analyst.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, David.
And the NSRBN Project Manager. He's been with the NSRBN right from day one, Amedeo Bernardi.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mayor and council members and Gail and everyone. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we're excited to have you here and we're glad to have this presentation. So we'll take it away.
Great. So as I've provided a number of different documents, but the very it might be beneficial to watch a very short video that we have prepared. We've been referring it to as our infomercial. It'll provide some background to the document you have in front. Is really looking for a final decision. We're looking to incorporate the NSRBN by the end of February. We are, along with our partners in Crown Capital Partners, we're looking to build out the entire region, a network, a fiber optic network in the entire region. So all 9 communities in the NSRBN by the end of the 2021 construction season. It's a very optimistic goal, but that's what we're looking at doing. As all of us are aware, we all live in the region and our connectivity is poor. So we want to hit the ground running and not use all the time we can to our benefit. So enough of me rambling away. We'll jump into the video and hopefully this answers as many questions as possible.
Thank you, Melanie. And Gail, you're going to get us that video. Thank you.
Are you able to see the video?
Yes, I can see the video. I'm having trouble hearing it though.
Okay, I stopped it just in case it wasn't working, so I'll just start it here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm not hearing the video, Gail. Is anyone else hearing it?
No.
Okay.
I'm certainly not an expert at this, as you can see. My apologies Shannon, do you have, or Melanie, do you have any suggestions of what I can check?
Gail, it's Amedeo. Did you, maybe it's our broadband connection, did you want me to try? I have it queued up on my end and I could
Sure.
share screen.
Sure, go for it. Yeah.
I haven't done it on GoToMeeting, so apologies ahead of time. So you'll either see the video or my shopping list, one or the other.
Unshare my screen now. Okay, there we go.
So I'll try.
Thank you.
Oh, whoever's the presenter has to allow me to use the share screen.
I am not a techie, obviously. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
So if I share it, Amedeo, how do I get it so that you can use it?
No, you're supposed to have a button somewhere to say allow. You should be allowing me to somebody else to share.
Okay. Oh, goodness. That's why they don't put me in charge of these types of things.
Gail, while you're figuring out that, maybe I'll just speak to the EPCOR position statement in the document, or that was in the package that we sent out. So one of the documents that we sent out to Mayor and Council was an NSRBN position statement on EPCOR. So recently, some of our member communities, and I understand that Hornpain was one of them, was approached by a company called EPCOR. So EPCOR is an Alberta-based gas utility company, and EPCOR is looking to expand to the broadband market. So their broadband is not their primary source of business, but it's they're looking to bring natural gas into select communities through the Lakeshore Natural Gas Project. So we understand that they've approached 4 of the 9 communities in the region. So Hornpain, Wawa, Manitowoc, and Mishpon First Nations. So Amedeo and I did sit down and have a couple of meetings with them. We explained to them that we've been working on this and have already submitted 3 different funding applications. The CRTC, the ICON, and the UBF fund. So we're at an advanced stage in our project, and we felt it was best that that we proceed in the manner that that we were going with the NSRBN and include all 9 communities. David, did you have anything to add about EPCOR? I know that you spoke to EPCOR directly as well.
Yeah, not pertaining to this matter, but I have advised them on another project that this would be their first venture into broadband. They're looking at doing the same thing out in Alberta as well, but they have no active projects. They've not managed a broadband network, so they do kind of lack that industrial expertise that that we would be getting with the current partners that we've been engaged with from I guess since early last year. So but they do take out the, like, they do offer the financing perspective, but they also are interested in owning the assets where they can. So that's kind of the you know, investment mandate that EPCOR has.
At this point, I understand that they've only approached the the 4 communities that could potentially be involved in natural gas, because they were kind of looking to shoot 2 birds with 1 stone if they were going to install natural gas utilities in the communities. They would kind of at the same time install fiber into the communities. Is that correct, Amedeo?
Yes, that's correct, Melanie.
Okay. So our official position on this is you feel that our communities are better off keeping our group together and kind of staying the line? That's a question to you. What's your official opinion?
That's a question to Amedeo, Melanie?
That was, yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Obviously, my the 3 years, I can see how long it's taken us to get to this point, and the path forward, the fact that we have Crown on board, that we have the financial backstop, that we're actively, as Melanie, all the things Melanie mentioned, that we're actively already entering stage.
Here you go, Amedeo. You should have it now.
You're just on mute there, Amedeo. I'm not sure if you're speaking to us. Okay.
Oh, actually, it was good. I was talking to myself because I'm going, oh, this is interesting. Let me do that. And sorry, I'm trying to get the screen up here. All right. Does that everybody see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, here we go.
Council's getting a nod. Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, good day, everyone, and welcome to the second NSRBN infomercial. So, in absence of a community visit due to COVID-19,
I just lost the sound. Has everyone else got the sound?
after the
Oh, there we go.
chance to report the message, Amedeo, myself, and David Pickett will be doing a number of teleconference call-ins to all of your communities and hoping to answer any questions. But as we've said time and time again, all of our panelists are available at any time for questions from the community members. So we do have, I'll be acting as the moderator. Again, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Melanie Pilon. I'm the Economic Development Officer at the Township of Peterborough, and I'm the NSRBN Chair and Community Broadband Champion. So we'll jump right in, and we'll ask the first question to our project manager, Amedeo Bernardi, who's been with us the longest. Well, let's take a look at my script here, Amedeo. Amedeo, you've been with us since the beginning, the past 3 years. Can you please provide a brief overview of the project, a quick summary of the funding that the group has applied for to date, and in your experience, do you feel that the NSRBN is well positioned to be successful to receive funding?
Well, thanks, Melanie. Thanks for the introduction, and hello, everyone that's watching. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a great journey. We have been on this for 3 years, and it's a phenomenal project. And I know it's a model actually across Canada, given that we've been, Melanie and I and David have been in discussions with several groups throughout, talking about what we've done and what our successes have been. So the project as it stands now is 9 communities, of which all of you are the audience are watching this. So we're greatly appreciative of you being part of this. And we have applied to the CRTC Broadband Fund. We have an active application there with no word yet as to when that might come out, and we might hear something about it. We are actively applying now to the Ministry of Infrastructure in Ontario for their ICON fund. We qualified through to stage 2. So at the end of January 27th, the team will be putting in the application there. And I'd be remiss to say that the team actually, the important parts of the team certainly are the Crown team, YRA, so John, Josh, and David Pickett, RDM Management have all been assisting with this application and really happy with it so far. Also Tri-Spec, Lee LaRue from Tri-Spec. So we have a lot of horsepower and we're really, really happy with the quality of information. On the heels of applying for ICON, we will be applying for the Universal Broadband Fund for the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. So you'll always hear it as I said. That's due February 15th. It's built on the shoulders of ICON. And again, we're very, we're looking forward to putting that in. We have I'd say a perfect model for what all the government agencies are looking for. We're multi-community. We have a great partner in Crown that is there to help us with everything from funding through to implementation and the expertise. And very importantly, we have a cross-section of communities that include a French minority, which is Dubreuilville. We have 5 First Nation communities, and we have, including Dubreuilville, 4 municipalities, all within the footprint. And that really checks off a lot of boxes on the matrix that the governments are looking at. So really excited. I think we stand a very good chance of getting some funding. Of course, no one has a crystal ball, and you can imagine how oversubscribed each of these funds will be if history has anything to do with it. But we're well aligned for a strong output. But again, we'll see. And the good news is, with Crown, we have a lot of contingencies built in that this project will not fail. And I'm very happy to be part of it. So thanks again, Melanie, for sharing this. And any questions, you can always reach out to us.
Thanks a lot, Amedeo. I really appreciate the very detailed answer. And thank you very much for doing introductions of the group. That was amazing how you slid that in. And so since we don't have to do introductions now, we'll go right on to Joe Moses. Joe, alongside Peggy DeMang from Chapel Free, you've graciously represented our Indigenous communities on the NSRBN executive. And I understand that you've specifically investigated the availability of First Nations funding from Indigenous Services Canada, or as we all know it as INAC. Are you able to provide us with a short explanation of the availability of these funds?
Hi, thank you, Melanie, and welcome all that are tuning in. Yes, thank you for the question. And the short answer is that through the Indigenous Services Canada, there are no specific funds dedicated specific to broadband infrastructure projects. This is reflected in the potential makeup of the NSRBN partnership with Crown Corporation in our intent to ensure equal ownership by all communities, non-native and native municipalities. As Amedeo said so eloquently, the diversity around the partners of the application is important. None of our communities would be able to go this alone unilaterally because all of the high-level government funds we've applied to require diverse partnership bases, and that's what we feel makes a strong application. The work that we did complete in investigating what funds were available from Indigenous Services Canada they redirect us back to the CRTC fund, which is a national pool of dollars not specific to Indigenous Services Canada. So some of the public messaging out there might be a bit misleading from the government agencies, saying that they're throwing dollars towards broadband projects specific to First Nations. But that being said, the funding does not reflect that there are specific dollars specific to First Nations. There may be community-based regional opportunities that communities may be trying to go through and push through for core community infrastructure, but those are through existing funds which are already well in channels and more aligned with economic development activities such as building housing infrastructure and other things that everybody will be accustomed to. So We've, to this point, not discovered any specific funding specific to broadband initiatives, and we are being redirected back to the CRTC fund. And so via this partnership, we are applying to the CRTC. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. David Pickett, you are the NSRBN financial analyst. You conducted a detailed financial review of the NSRBN public-private partnership that we have set up with Crown Capital. Can you reiterate your position and perhaps provide a little background on what led each of this conclusion?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mel. So over the past year, since being engaged with the NSRBN project, we've conducted an independent and comprehensive review on costing of the project to deliver services for the residents and businesses within the 9 communities. My conclusion was to recommend the partnership on the grounds that the return sought by the private partners in Crown Capital is fair, and in exchange for that capital and industry expertise, they're taking on the role as industrial and financial sponsor for the project. They're also willing to offer the NSRBN communities an equal partnership with no upfront commitment of capital. If the funding applications are successfully achieved based on some of the information we were hearing from Amedeo earlier, then not only will this project provide a social benefit of connectivity comparable to more suburban areas within Ontario, but there's a positive financial return that the communities can benefit from the project as well. So that's really what led to me delivering a fair recommendation for this.
Thanks, David. That sounds excellent. And Josh Axler, I have a few questions for you. Josh, what is the level of commitment required from each community?
Thanks, Mel. For those of you who don't know me, Josh Axler from Crown Capital and Community Network Partners. So as David mentioned, we're not asking for any commitments up front, but we are asking that each of the community members become anchor customers of the NSRBN network. What that means is each anchor will make a 20-year commitment to purchase broadband and voice over internet phone services at a cost of $5,000 per month. Now, with that $5,000 a month, each community will receive 500 megabyte speed, unlimited fiber internet for up to 5 community-controlled locations, and voice over internet phone services. And of course, as David mentioned, you will also become owners of the network, sharing in the overall profits.
Excellent. So you're initially becoming a customer of your own business.
Exactly.
Perfect. So is there any way for a community to off-ramp should they wish to leave the NSRBN once they sign on?
That's a great question. We are asking for a commitment once the community members sign on, which is why we have taken the time to really put some thought into this partnership and network offering, and giving the community members time to really consider and understand what they're getting themselves into. Having said that, this really is a unique both opportunity for the NSRBN members as customers and owners. As customers, they're going to be receiving best-in-class speeding service at market rates that are comparable to major urban centers across Canada. And then as owners, they'll benefit from the profit sharing in the network and be ensured that any cost increase will really just be matching inflation rather than the profit needs of a third-party provider that they don't have any control of.
Okay, I have one last question for you, Josh. The profits that each community can expect to receive, can you give us a quick rundown on how they will be divided and when communities can expect to receive them?
That's a great question, Matt. So the profits are going to be shared 50-50 between the NSRBN members and Crown's community network partners, both as the limited partners that will own the actual network assets. The 9 NSRBN members will each receive an equal share of their 50% of profits. Profits are expected to be delivered once the operating company has built a minimum reserve of cash balances, and we expect to start making payments quarterly after the cash is available. So based on our initial modeling that we've done with David, we expect that profits will start being paid around the second year of operations.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
So, John, all of these communities are chomping at the bit to get connectivity. When's the service gonna come?
Well, chomping at the bit is one way to put it. I mean, I think we feel very passionately about the fact that the situation is quite dire at this point. These communities have been underserved for far too long. And so we really see no good reason to be conservative. We are very aggressive with our scheduling. We want to take advantage of the upcoming construction season, recognizing how short it is, and in bringing together the experienced professionals, taking a look at this plan. And of course, Amedeo and Joe alluded to the fact that this project's been underway for quite some time now. Looking at all of the data and looking at what's doable based on our experience in building in the underserved and remote and rural parts of the country, we feel that we can deliver, if not all, certainly a substantial work within this year. And so by the end of this year, we're hoping that we can deliver commercial services. That's our plan right now.
Excellent. That's extremely optimistic. Is there a contingency plan in the event that the timeline needs to be amended, or is there an ability to provide an interim service?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that it does seem ambitious, and it is ambitious, but it's because it needs to be ambitious. We're very, very determined to get this built and get it built quickly, but we do have a number of contingencies in both technology as well as procedural. So we're technology agnostic. We're not married to one particular type of technology. We're very experienced both with wired and wireless solutions. So we have a number of approaches, and this is a team made up of individuals that have spent, the last decade or more, solving the toughest problems in the most remote and rural regions of the country, with the most severe climates, et cetera. So I can say with confidence that, this is absolutely achievable. But I will say this too, is that there are a number of dependencies. Like I said, some are civil, some are technical, some are, within the realm of what we deal with on a daily basis. But one thing is for sure is, we need to have the commitment by, the stakeholders and the community leaders behind us in order to be successful. But it's absolutely achievable, and we're confident and capable to deliver it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Don. And so last, but certainly not least, the CEO of Crown Capital, Chris. Chris, as Crown Capital CEO, did you want to wrap up our conversation by providing a bit of insight of why Crown is interested in partnering with the NSRBN and the benefits you see of the Crown NSRBN collaboration?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Melanie. And thank you everybody for tuning in and watching this video. Just want to express my appreciation for the work that the executive has done to make this a very investable project. Melanie and Joe, those in particular, have been outstanding to work with, and really look forward to a very, very long working relationship with your groups. We've, for those who don't know Crown, it's a alternative investment platform. We invest in lots of interesting things, from companies to power assets to telecom assets. And we see a really strong future in connecting the underserved. We've acquired Wirey, we've acquired a company called Galaxy, we've started being our partners, because we really truly believe that broadband is an essential service and something that it will get built and is important to people's lives, communities, and success of relationships and education and everything. It is really the telephone of the future, power lines of the future, things that we can't live without. It is really a real tremendous privilege to be able to work with your groups to be a partner in these projects rather than strictly a financier. We see the opportunity of having a very long-term asset here that can produce reasonably good returns. But as Melanie points out, that this is something that has been in the works. It's core to your communities, and one that we're just happy to be part of. Our view is it takes more than money. It needs the execution operation to do it, and that's really what we're trying to develop here with this transaction. Is we're going to underwrite the financial exposure if the grants don't come. As Amedeo mentions, there is a fair bit of competition for that money. We do expect this project will get some. We don't know how much. I don't think we can see us waiting until that's clear. Like, we could be waiting for years if that's the case. So we will underwrite that investment, and if it comes, great, we can just reduce the amount of investment required. But in addition to the money, we have the operational expertise to make this happen. You know, John is, you mentioned, as a decade of experience, and with the Galaxy Group, we have also more decades of experience of servicing extremely remote locations. It makes Wawa look like Manhattan in terms of what we need to do there. But really, in closing summary, really appreciate the opportunity to be your partner, and as always available to talk to our partners about our philosophy and whatever questions or concerns they may have. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So a big thank you to everyone who participated in our second NSRBN infomercial. So it's our hope that this video will be able to provide a bit of clarity in the absence of an actual in-person visit to your community. Anyone who knows me knows that I love a road trip, so I do miss coming out to your communities. The NSRBN is looking to have the incorporation and anchor commitments from the communities received no later than the end of February 2021. So as John mentioned, this date is extremely important if we're looking to have shovels in the ground and the build started and then completed, right? Adhering to this timeline is critical. So approvals, final network design approvals, and procurement and pre-sales activity is needed. We need to begin in order to meet our final targets. So as we enter into the final stages of our formalization of the NSRBN entity, we request that each community declare how it intends to proceed by providing a council resolution. So should your community not wish to proceed, which is fine, the time to off-ramp from the NSRBN is now. So please make your intentions known to us. So you can certainly contact me. With that said, your urgency and attention is appreciated. Thank you very much. Miigwech, merci beaucoup, and thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for sharing the video, and I'll let you proceed with the rest of your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fort. I think now might be a good opportunity to open up the floor for questions if anyone has any.
Okay, Council, we can proceed that way. Is there any further documents that you want to go through for your presentation? Or we'll continue with questions and then that'll wrap up, Melanie? I'm just trying to get a feel of the presentation outline here.
The other documents included in your package are the FAQs, the frequently asked questions.
I got that.
Which were covered in the NSRBN infomercial.
Okay.
There is also the resolution for consideration.
Thank you.
And there is the NSRBN term sheet. It's the non-binding term sheet between the NSRBN and Crown Capital Partners. And that goes over the legal and governance structure, the ownership of assets and capital funding. And that is referred to in the resolution. And Gail, it looks like she had her hand up.
Okay, yeah, so we can, just one other question for you, Melanie, before I go to Gail. Council is able to ask you questions on the infomercial and all the documents that they have in front of them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Gail?
I just thought that since the last two documents didn't come till later in the afternoon, and I know some councillors weren't able to have the time to read them, if you thought it might be a good idea for Melanie to just sort of, or somebody from the team to just go through, and if you wanted more clarification or to walk you through that agreement, it might save some questions for when you're discussing this the next time, if you're discussing it at your next meeting.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Gail. Melanie, is there someone that's prepared to go through documents from pages 11 to 20 in our package? So that's the term sheet, the non-binding term sheet.
Yes, so I will hand that over to David, and Amedeo can jump in where necessary.
I just need to pull that up. That way I can walk us through that. I think, Melanie, you sent that out to me as well, right?
Yes.
So are we on the, I guess we can start at the term sheet?
Yes, if you could, please.
Okay, so then is Amedeo, are you still the presenter or is it gone back to Gail?
Yeah, no, it's gone back to Gail. And Gail, I don't know if you have the documents handy. You can throw it on the screen, or I can.
Well, actually, I don't have them on my laptop. I don't have a connection right now to my email's not working very well, so I can't do that. But I could share the screen to you, David, if you want.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And just to clarify, so it's the term sheet, and then is it the resolution that you'd like me to go through as well, or just the term sheet?
I don't think we need to go through the resolution. We can take care of that at our end. It's more the community schedule B and then the term sheet. So it's a 2-page term sheet. And then I'm looking at the page numbers from our agenda package. So it's page 15 of our agenda package is the schedule B, anchor customer services.
Certainly, yeah. No, I've got them all in one document, so that's great. I'll share that.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
All right, can everyone see?
Yes, good.
Okay, so this is the non-binding term sheet that the NSRBN Executive Committee, including our legal counsel, DD West, and Crown Capital Partners, were able to come to. The first point and the first group of questions and items listed here pertain to the legal and governance structure. So first and foremost, the NSRBN members are, we're planning to incorporate them into a corporation, a corporate body that will have the 9 NSRBN communities as shareholders to participate in the project. So they will be the entity that owns the 50% limited partnership interest in the asset. All shareholders are expected to execute a unanimous shareholders agreement. So that will just kind of define how all shareholders, interact with each other and how the overall governance of the corporation occurs. This would include, people looking to join, but also if existing shareholders want to leave, there will be rules and provisions included within that document. That document has not been completed yet, but we do have a couple of points listed here that will kind of guide how that document does, materialize and get completed for review of all of the shareholders. It's expected that there will be a board of directors. Since there are 9 communities, the initial number of board members, we feel 9 is appropriate for that. Having an odd number just means that when items and different things are put to a vote as far as guiding the company in a strategic direction, having a deadlock with an even number is not very efficient and effective. So having and having that odd number does help to actually move things along for the community members and shareholders. The second point is on future shareholder buy-in. So if there are other communities that want to join the NSRBN member corporation, maybe not necessarily at the same point that we're getting everything established right now, but in 3 years or potentially beyond that, we're planning on putting in a mechanism such that they could buy in, but it would occur at fair market value. So The project will, as it gets constructed and starts operations, become less and less risky. And as it becomes less and less risky, it's more and more attractive to be a part of it. So it's anticipated that the value will increase in the future. However, that's not always a guarantee. But in that case, if someone wants to join, we are planning to put in a provision that they would buy an equal share with the other partners, but they would also have to pay a premium in order to join, given that they were not a first mover and early adopter of the network and the project. Just like we have a provision for a individual shareholder or community to join, we have something which would permit an exit strategy. So for whatever reason that may come about in the future, if a shareholder would like to leave and sell their interest, we're anticipating to include a buyout right such that they could receive fair market value for their minority interest, so their 1/9 shareholding, or 1 divided by however many shareholders are at the time, in case others do join in the future. Less a discount. So typically with minority interests, you would, because you don't have a strategic and majority shareholding to control the operations, you do have to convince 8 other shareholders to kind of go along with your decision. Most oftentimes the equity value of your interest is discounted because of you being in a minority position. So we have included that because that's most likely what a independent third-party evaluator will conclude. And as operating profits are received by the entity, the value will be captured at the specific point of time that the shareholder would like to exit. And then as profits come in, the other members would look to allocate some of that to pay out the exiting shareholder. So then therefore they acquire those shares and control more of the corporation. So that's specific to NSRBN Member Corp, which is the entity that the 9 communities will all become members of, hopefully. The second item pertains to the General Partner Corp. So in the project, the public-private partnership relationship, and structuring it with a limited partnership, you need to have a general partner. General partner is the entity that will undertake the operations, but also has to hold on to the liability. So if there were, lawsuits against the business, the limited partners are kind of shielded from that because they're not liable. They may own the assets, but they're not responsible for the operations of the actual service company. The general partner is the partner within the group of companies that holds on to the liability, and also is the one that is active in operating the assets to use them and control them. So there will be a unanimous shareholders agreement set up for GP Corp, and GP Corp will be owned 50% each by NSRBN Member Corp and Crown through Crown's Telecom LP and Crown Capital Partners. Item number 3 just describes the governance that's expected for GP Corp. So rather than the 9 board of directors that we were anticipating for the NSRBN Member Corp, this one will be a little bit smaller, 5 members, keeping it at an odd number. Is what's suggested. The owners of the General Partner Corp, NSRBN Member Corp, and Crown Capital will be able to appoint 2 board members each based on their 50% interest. And then the tiebreaker, or the 5th board member, we recommend that being a neutral or independent third party that's agreed upon by both parties, so that there's no deadlocks as far as strategic direction of the general partnership. With an even number of board members, you've got that 5th who is independent and based on the the different things that are proposed, they can rule and keep things moving along. Item number 4 is the limited partnership. So that so the limited partners will basically own the assets, but they won't be actively managing the assets. So they're shielded from liability. The expected breakdown of ownership for the limited partnership is 50% by the NSRBN, 50% by Crown through their 25 and 25%. And then all partners will execute a limited partnership agreement. So the limited partnership, it's not like a corporation, so there's no shareholders agreement, but it is a little bit similar in the sense that you have an interest in something. So similar to a shareholders agreement, we will be looking at putting in mechanisms for exit of limited partners in case there's an interest to replace them in the future. Crown, that being Crown. And so we've included a couple of those provisions that are pretty standard with a lot of these agreements, whether it's a shareholders agreement or a partnership agreement. Buy and sell rights, right of first refusal. I wanted to make sure there was a right of first refusal included for the community, because if for whatever reason Crown doesn't want to be that long-term partner and continue to own the assets, we're talking assets that we expect to own and operate for 20 years plus. And if their investment horizon happens to be less than that, we do want to have the right of first refusal such that those assets can stay in the community and under community control. And then we've included a couple of other things that we'll have to still just flesh out the specific language, drag along and tag along rights. And just item 5, the GP Corp will be the general partner. So again, that's the entity responsible for management of the limited partnership. And we did recommend that they would be the ones that would spearhead annual business plans and budgets that would then need to go to, there would be board oversight from, the 5 board members within the GP Corp, which would ultimately need to approve those business plans and budgets on an annual basis such that we could achieve our strategies. So Crown shall be the manager of the General Partnership Corporation. GP Corp and the GP manager will enter into a management agreement which will set out the role, responsibilities, and accountabilities of the GP manager, including the management fee, which is anticipated to be made up of a percentage of total assets and incurred costs. This is pretty common when looking at asset management and dealing with financial sponsors and looking at and securing any type of private equity. The fee that's been contemplated and proposed is less than what I've seen in other projects. I've seen certain models that include, a fee of say 2%. I think 0.5% has been proposed in this, but we will still be fleshing that specific number out. I do see this being a very small component of the overall costs of the project. Crown will be taking an active role in providing some of the operational expertise, and so I think because they're interested in that, it's made this less of a priority for them in their negotiations. So, and then as long as there's a loan, so Crown is proposing to finance the bulk of the project costs with a loan that will be amortized over the term of the assets. So we're looking at a 20-year amortization. As long as there's still loan outstanding, they just wanted protection for their investment, that they would not be replaced, because for them, it would just be too risky for them to make that type of investment if they didn't have some oversight and some visibility into who's managing the capital and then the operations of the network to generate returns on that. There will be a plan for Indigenous and local workforce development. So within the budget, we've put in items for a general manager that we would like to hire locally, as well as a couple of, just starting to develop a local workforce, whether those be technicians, maybe some local sales as well. So those items have been included within the budget. So that kind of touches on point 8 as well. And then point 9, there will be legal agreements that will be agreed to insulate the NSRBN and all members from direct liability for business debts and liabilities established by establishing the GP Corp and the LP. So that's why the partnership structure for this project was recommended, because being able to separate that liability and not having the municipalities individually on the hook for debts that the business could accrue to operate and potentially expand was something that we wanted to make sure was in there. Item number 10, ownership of the assets. So the LP structure, the limited partnership will hold ownership of the assets. And depending on government grants coming in, it's still to be determined. So some of the funds have specific stipulations. And so as those grants are awarded, we will make sure that we can structure accordingly to make sure we can benefit from those funds. It is understood that the LP will likely be the custodian and owner of the assets, which of course still falls under the 50% ownership breakdown. And item 11, capital funding. So Crown will contribute 100% of the initial capital up to 8 million. So 8 million was kind of our downside scenario when we looked at 2 different scenarios of potential scenarios for the project. So that included some contingency and additional cost for not being able to get some of that upfront grant money to cover some of our project costs. But they did guarantee that they would back, so in case the grant money doesn't come in, they will contribute the full amount to make sure that the project gets completed and services can start being delivered. The terms of the loan agreement are stated here in item 11. So 8% interest rate, which is in line with their cost of capital. 20-year term and amortization period, and an allowance for prepayment. We made sure we wanted to put that in because currently interest rates have decreased. So 8% kind of captures the risk of the project from this point, and it is pretty accurate, I think, up until the first 5 to 10 years of the project, because you're talking about an early stage entity with no proven track record of operations. But the allowance for prepayment gives the flexibility for the corporation and the structure to ultimately refinance if interest rates are a lot lower. And then they also requested first priority security over the assets, which is common if they're providing any type of debt financing. If there's an inability to pay back the debt and service the debt, so pay the principal plus interest, similar to a mortgage. If you default, they have the right to kind of claim security over those assets, which which a bank would be also making sure they include that within their financing agreement. Item 12 is acknowledge that the NSRBN is applied to various government grant programs, and any government grant monies received from such grant programs shall be used to pay on the loan. So that is the plan as they invest to build out the capital of the project. It's understood that the grant money will come in to repay the capital that's already invested. It will not be used, and that's typically how the grants work. So they want to see that the money has been spent, and then with invoices and proper documentation, they'll then release funds to pay you back on those approved eligible expenses. So to date, we've applied for, I believe, $2.6 million in total. I'll have to confirm those numbers, but you know, that represents up to 35% of the total project cost, which you know, if we are successful, that will certainly lead to a solid financial return for the project. And then just member expectations. So as mentioned by Josh on the infomercial, you know, it's important that the shareholders of the NSRBN and the members who seek to benefit from this, as well as their communities, you know, become a customer and provide commitments. So 5,000 a month plus annual inflationary cost increases just protects, you know, the financial partner from some downside risk, but also, you know, it does bring and cover some of the fixed costs that will be needed to undertake the broadband business within the areas. So there will be a benefit to that. Josh mentioned, I think, 500 megabytes of internet bandwidth as far as the speeds, but unlimited usage. And it also includes voice over IP services. So using the internet to do all of your phone calling and stuff as well would be included within that. So here we've got the NSRBN members listed to sign on to the non-binding term sheet. I'm just going to, so that's them listed as well. And then here we'll focus on Schedule B because that's, see if I can make this a bit bigger. So this is pretty standard. It's almost like a quote form that I'm that I've seen commonly used by internet service providers. So part of so Schedule B really relates to that last item that's listed on the term sheet. So it supports the 5,000 per month that's expected as the anchor commitment. So they're offering internet service for 20 years at those locations with unlimited usage, the VoIP services. So they've got 6 landlines included within that for 20 years and, you know, covers all local calling. They've included terms and conditions, the non-recurring charge. So that was left at 0 because we've actually kind of built that in to all of the project costs. So that will be, you know, financed. Oftentimes, if you were to see something similar from a competitive internet service provider, you know, they would charge you a one-time non-recurring charge. It would be higher if they were not physically in the area and needed to build out to you. You know, we've seen quotes for some of our First Nation partners that are in the 6 figures as far as non-recurring charges for, you know, internet service providers like Bell Canada to expand out to connect them. Some of them will potentially waive it if you sign a long-term contract. And so I think because the 20-year commitment is being contemplated in this schedule, and we've built in that into a lot of the project costs, we've gone ahead and used 0 as the placeholder there. Some of the internal wiring will be likely contemplated as a charge, just because all of our costs have basically gone from all of the outside plant, the conduit, the fiber cable, the cabinets, all of that going to a point of demarcation, which is kind of where the network ends, and then it's up to the owner of the property to set up their, you know, access and put their Wi-Fi device in and do all of their internal networking. So if there's any internal wiring and internal networking that the communities need for each of their sites, then you know, that would, I think, would be a cost that they would need to bear on their own. So maybe make this a bit bigger so we can look at the terms and conditions. So price includes port and access fees, management of circuit, and customer support. All preliminary work is included in monthly costs. To make this reflects one-time costs related to service provisioning and other charges as applicable, and invoice on confirmation on final design and firm order acceptance. So again, all of these items are essentially zeroed out. It's the internal wiring. I think that would just be any additional non-quoted cost here. So you know, figuring out what that would be with your IT department and the different municipal. Every building's different. If it's a bigger building, there's likely higher cost to go from a centralized telecom room to different parts of the building. So we not knowing those specifics, we were not able to comment that and include that information within this. And these are all pretty standard terms and conditions that you would see on any internet access contract. So monthly recurring charge, non-recurring charge, and installation timeframes to be confirmed following detailed site survey may include additional charges if extraordinary challenges must be overcome in order to provision services. We've kind of scoped out the areas in the network, but if there were issues in trying to bring service into some areas, we'd have to figure that out. But again, these are all standard.
Just to interrupt you just for a second there, David, I'm having
Certainly.
a difficulty reading the form, but I want to go to item 8. Is it in the last sentence, is it demarcation? Is that the word? It says any service construction beyond the demarcation point?
That's correct. So the demarcation point is that point that I mentioned earlier where the outside plant would, I guess, reach the building, and then it's the internal access network that takes over from there. So setting up any kind of Wi-Fi routers and doing the internal wiring and any, whether it's Ethernet or other type of internal structured cabling within the building.
Okay. Do you have any final comments that you'd like to make, David? I think we can open up the floor for questions and have discussion.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. So I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank all three of you for being here tonight and for preparing that video and getting it to us. I'm going to open up the floor to council for questions to any of the three presenters that you would have. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Paroff.
Thank you, Madam. Just a question. On that sheet, it says internet is up to 5 locations. Can you explain to me, is that 5 central locations and then we're responsible to bring it out to different customers, or can you explain that?
Sure. David, do you want me to jump in or does it matter?
Yeah, I know, absolutely, Amedeo.
Yeah, so it's 5 locations in this case that the town owns and controls up to. And keep in mind that the NSRBN the plan is we're building the entire community fiber to the home, fiber to the business, right? So everything from the community, from the town, municipal building, past the school, past the hospital, up and down. So when David says we've captured those non-recurring charges, and it's all part of the overall build. And what we're trying to do is 500 meg isn't really a lot. So but this is a good solid market rate. And so what we're saying is, so you're not thinking you're going to connect 10 locations. Most communities, you don't really control more than 4 or 5. You may have the council, the rec center, et cetera. But we collectively, as part of the build, will connect everything. But with those connections, you'll be able to, your IT group or whomever can say, you know what, we're going to send 100 meg to the rec center. We're going to send 50 here. So we're going to work with everybody to craft it, but we need it to sort of encapsulate it to try to capture the majority of the 9 communities, and generally what's the maximum that we would see in these communities, to start.
Does that answer your question, John?
Well, it sort of. So the township pays $5,000 a month. We get to provide internet for 5 buildings. Is that correct?
Up to 5, yeah.
And then each resident that joins in has to pay a certain amount, or?
Yeah, so from the residents and the businesses in the community, NSRBN becomes the ISP, the telephone company, right? So we collectively have a rate schedule that we're advertising. The rates are the same or better than what you pay in like a Toronto subdivision, because it was part of the CRTC mandate, part of our funding, and very competitive, if not the better pricing than anything sort of in Northern Ontario. We also checked our pricing against companies like DNet, companies that have their own networks and are operating in the footprint. But at that point, the NSRBN becomes the ISP, and we're selling services to 60-80%, hopefully, of the community, and that money comes in to fund the NSRBN. And David, you can probably take over in this part, is that the NSRBN, you're not only a client, but you're also the owner. So over time, there's profits and everything coming back into a company that you are currently would be 1/9 owner of. And David, if you want to explain that a little better.
Yeah, no, certainly. And then let's not forget that also includes the voice over IP connections over that as well, to give you the phone service that's needed. So yeah, the profits and the distributions, you would have a 1/9 share of the 50% that would be paid out quarterly, as Josh mentioned on the infomercial. And then those funds, once it's paid out, they're the communities to do with as they see fit.
Is that fully?
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask John if that fully answers his question.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to keep going on here, but so what'll happen is the township will pay their monthly dues, but in the end, we got to return back because there's different residential customers. So the monthly rate technically is not going to be that $5,000. It'll be something less, right? Is that okay? I do kind of understand it now. Thanks.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point, because I think that's key, is that we wanted to make sure that the model is for the communities, by the communities, and that the money that you as a community and you as a shareholder owner, a chunk of it stays within the community, is reinvested in the community, as opposed to, and not to speak disparagingly of any other service provider, because they're all doing the best they can. But, you have Bell in town, that money flows corporately out, right, to their shareholders. Well, now this money will stay in and you're a shareholder. And part of that money will go to, we've calculated, and that's part of David with Josh and Crown, is there's the model of making sure that based on every piece of equipment has a certain lifespan, that we're refreshing it, 3 years, 5 years, 20, 40, and it's all brand new up. So that, you're not waiting for a third-party corporation that's headed out of Vancouver to determine that, oh, it's time to upgrade the facilities in Ornpain. You have a voice and a seat at the table to determine that. And the money, as you mentioned, Councillor, a part of that does come back and hopefully grows. I mean, that's the idea, right? This is a long term. And we know that bandwidth, grows and the demand grows continuously. So that baseline that was calculated is truly just a baseline. We believe that it will grow.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from other councillors at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a general question. I'm interested to know how did you arrive at the 20-year figure? I mean, there's many rationale behind it. It wasn't a 15-year figure or 10, but you settled on the 20-year locked-in figure. Can you explain to me how you arrive at that figure, please?
Yeah, certainly. So the assets, the majority of the assets within the project, fiber optics, those have a very long useful life. Those can be, once you put them in the ground, or even string them up on hydro poles, those can last you well over 20 years. So I think we looked at it from an average basis based on the assets, and then tried to tie the financing to the use of the assets. And so amortizing the financing over a longer period also helped the business case from a cash flow perspective, because if we were to do it over 10 years on a loan of potentially up to $8 million, there would be larger kind of debt service costs throughout the project.
But don't you think, just in a follow-up, it would be a greater chance for people to buy in at a less of a period of time? The 20 is certainly a long-term contract for anybody to make a decision versus a 10 or 12-year program.
Yeah. So the 20 years for the service agreements with the anchor institutions, those were requested basically because they want to make sure that the anchor communities and the NSRBN member communities are going to be committed to the project. And if they're financing it, they want to make sure that there's at least some minimum stream of revenue that's coming in to cover the costs, mainly the gateway costs that they're going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on through the operations of the company, and then also the debt service cost over the term of the financial agreement. So they just wanted that long-term commitment to show that those fixed costs could be addressed.
So more secure, yeah, I understand. And there's just a last question or a comment. So since the municipality is a 1/9 shareholder, we would be also, in respect, be salespeople for this service, correct? Now, what would the role be of the municipality as far as staffing is concerned, or extra staffing? Because we are the owner now. All of a sudden, we're the owners of this service, which you certainly want to promote. And there's always a risk. Will people change from the current service provider? What's the cost? I mean, there's so many variables. So I just wanted to know what's the municipality's role would be in the future, please.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. So overall, the requirement, or one of the key pillars of the plan, is to hire local, have local resources as much as possible, based on trained individuals, skill sets, etc. So you can imagine initially in the project, it'll probably be, outside contractors to the extent of fiber placement and splicing. But as we move forward, one of the key requirements is the local operating manager will be somebody within the footprint that has intimate knowledge. The role of the community, so you won't have to worry about staffing locally per se to have people. We don't see it being a heavy front end in terms of having to do sales and et cetera. That'll be more centralized, probably a few people. Actually, I had a meeting earlier today. We were mapping that out. Part of it will be quite automated. A person would log on, say, I want this much internet, I want this much telephony, and it flows through. But We also know that our plan is for all the communities except for one, that we plan to run fiber to at least 80% of the addresses within the confines of the community, because we want to roll the trucks once or as little as possible. And we, even in our funding, our models, we're looking to connect every single address as the fiber goes by. Whether or not you want to be subscriber, we want to bring it to the edge of the house, the edge of the business, so that when all these crews leave, we have less of a delay. If you call, you know what, it'll be hooked up in days versus say, oh, we got to wait 3-4 weeks for somebody to show up. From a sales effort, you're 100%. It is, each community will be its own biggest sales resource salesperson. It doesn't matter how you do it, through your social media platforms, information sessions, and really driving that. And one of the things that Melanie is really a key part of, and Joey Moses is, we're going through a big program called pre-sales. So the idea is to further reduce the risk to all the shareholders. Is we are already working with a marketing company that's part of the Crown family, and looking at ways to get into each of the communities, say, hey, here we are, we're NSRBN, this is what we're going to do. We're probably going to change the name because NSRBN is quite a mouthful. And real grassroots marketing, and that's where the community, I think that's where the community, the biggest role is. But as far as having to worry about having a person, on the payroll, no, you don't have to worry about that. That'll be under that OPCO. The OPCO will take care of it, and it'll be done quite efficiently that way. But at the beginning, each of you are the ambassadors and upfront pre-sale people. And I found when I've done markets like this in my previous lives, that is the most effective thing. The community, social media, door knockers, putting signs on the lawns, putting, hey, we're a gigabit community at the entrance, on the way in and way out is better than anything. So hopefully that answers.
Okay. Yeah, I think that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor for further questions from council. As council's thinking there, I'll give you some time. I do have several different questions. I'm not sure who to address them all to. One, I'll touch on, Amedeo, you just mentioned about having that you'll hire local, general. When you say local or centralized, what does that mean to you within the footprint? Because Hornpain is on the edge of this footprint. And so where are the expertise going to be located, or will there be multiple sites for this expertise?
Yeah, I think the right answer will be multiple sites. So we haven't landed on one. It's not like there's going to be a head office per se in any of the communities. We are still working through the tactics of how do we pre-sale, how do we do that? And we're also working with feeling and talking to local resources, what we call boots in the ground. So after everything is set up and after everything is in process, things will go wrong. People will, will have new customers. So we need to, we can't have somebody 12 hours away from Hornpain being the service.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's where my question's coming from. If I would like to see that there be a minimum service allowance for service time to all the communities so that it's agreed upon. Yes. Also, when we were looking at the infomercial, it talked about the profit margin, and that profit margin starting in about 2 years. So what are we seeking? What is the estimates for this beginning profit margin, and what are you hoping to gain over the overall profit margin after that for the next 18 years?
I can handle that one. So initially, we're hoping to be positive cash flow by, Josh mentioned year 2.
Right.
We have, let me just make sure I'm looking at the right scenario here. So he mentioned year 2. It is year 2 in the optimistic scenario. And
just while you're on that, David, just to a follow-up question that I have to that too is I know that you had mentioned, sorry, it wasn't yours, that that there would be a cash flow reserve created. And once that balance of that cash flow reserve is created, that the profits would start going. I was wondering too what that cash flow reserve balance was going to be.
So the cash flow reserve balance would be based on the expected economic obsolescence or depreciation of the assets underlying the network. So we used 15%, but that is actually quite conservative. So we tried to use that as a way to, most of these, the bulk of the assets are going to be 25-year estimated useful life. And if you were to think about that, 4% would be somewhat of a good kind of figure to use for that. So we went with a higher number to say, you know what, some money needs to be allocated to a reserve so that when some of these assets start to become obsolete, some of the active networking equipment, as an example, we're able to use that reserve to bring in replacements so that the service can continue to go on and we can continue to run the business and generate future cash flow. So that was what we kind of had in mind for doing that. So that came out before we would be looking to pay out any type of dividends or distributable cash flow to the partners.
So when we say that there'll be a creative positive cash flow by year 2, that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be profits being distributed by that time, because we have to create this cash balance reserve. And if we're looking at 15% of bulk assets, and if we're looking at our assets being approximately about $8 million worth of assets or more actually by that time, that's quite a reserve that we're going to build first, correct?
Yeah, so I wasn't necessarily saying that the 15% was actually out of cash flow that remained. So
Okay.
The cash flow, yeah, so it's a smaller, it is a smaller number, but it keeps that cash on hand, and it's restricted just for use in replenishment for the future. So that will kind of accrue and grow over the next, the anticipation is you won't have to underlay an expenditure of, say, a few $100,000 within the first 3 to 5 years of the project, but you'll have that cash on hand that will continue to grow for when the next round of equipment needs to be purchased, let's say in year 6 or in year 7. So the 15% was mainly based just off of cash flow, but and we also have repair and maintenance budgeted directly into the operational outflows within the model. So we budgeted in throughout the 20 years. Let me just pull that up real quick. Basically just over $750,000 of additional repair and maintenance expenses that will go on to fix the assets and continue to extend their life so that they can they can get the estimated useful life that we've assumed.
Okay, thank you for that. So we're looking at possibly, I'm thinking probably about year 4, that there would be positive take back. Like, I don't want to assume that if there's positive profits that we're able to glean from the 9 communities, I don't want us to assume it's going to start right at year 2, that it will likely start later on.
I would agree with that. Josh made that comment on the infomercial. My model, even in the more pessimistic case, there are positive profits that we project, and we made some assumptions such as, we did the model on a cash basis, not on an accrual basis. So, we didn't assume that you'd be carrying large receivable balances or large payable balances. We assumed that those would essentially match each other and be, earned and cashed within the current year. But I would agree that, year 3 or year 4 would be the more conservative approach, and the model supports that's feasible, and receiving distributions, I think, even in the worst case, we had some distributions going out a little bit earlier, that would affect kind of the positive profitability, like your IRR or your net present value within the project, but it wouldn't change it too much if we assume that there wasn't positive cash flow in the first 2 years. There are expectations that by year 3 or 4 there'll be some significant cash flow, and in the worst case we could see the NSRBN earning in the realm of 300,000 in distributable cash flow by year 3 and year 4. So then that would be split 9 ways and go to each community.
Okay. So I still have a few more questions. Council, do you have any other questions right now? I don't want to take over the whole floor there. Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to continue on. So John in the infomercial had mentioned, so this is the CEO, I believe, of Crown that I'm speaking about.
John's with YRIE and Community Network Partners.
Okay, so, sorry, that's...
Yeah, not a problem. He's essentially the operational expert. So has his experiences in building and operating YRIE and some of Crown's telecom entities.
Okay, so he had mentioned that by the end of 2021, you're delivered delivery for commercial services. So I have a couple questions on this. So are we talking about putting the fiber, so specifically in Hornpain, are we looking at partnering with Hydro and putting fiber on the poles and then having these demarcation locations where people can hook into?
Yeah, so it either or or a blend. So we are either applying to Hydro for approval to mount poles and or burying the fiber. Our preference is to bury in most cases because of the cost, the ongoing cost with Hydro and the requirement to change out their poles and the expense. So where we can, we budgeted to do buried conduit, but that would be, and yes, you're right, it's very aggressive, but it is very, very feasible that if we can get incorporated, put in the orders to Bell and Shaw for all the background stuff, do our construction assessment, get our construction teams together and obviously work with Hornpain for whatever permitting we need and approvals we need to access your rights of way and roads, that it's not a large build for a lot of these companies, right? We're kind of deeming that the 9 communities really look like 9 subdivisions in a Toronto type of development, right? So
preferably it would be in ground. That would be the preference.
Preferably would be in ground for all reasons, cost, weather, everything.
Okay, so if we're looked at as a small community, how many of these demarcation locations are we looking at having, like for a place the size of Hornpain? Like, is there a figure for that of how many per household, like down a street, like? And I'm assuming these are these green boxes that end up alongside, or the smaller 1-by-1 poles that come out of the ground. Is this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those aren't the demarcations. Those are the like splice points, the handholds. Okay. So in a buried scenario, they would be flush to the lawn, right? The boxes where they go in and then they pull and they do all the splicing. And maybe one every block or so, that sometimes, depending on the equipment we finalize on, there might be, like you say, those green boxes that stick out of the lawn, maybe every block or so, a couple of block. But really, like we had fiber come down our neighborhood that Bell did actually, and after the second season, when the grass grows back, when they do a little slice, you don't see it anymore. You don't even see where the boxes are. So that's sort of what that is.
Okay. And where is the fiber coming from? Like, where is your main source?
Well, that's a great question. So we have orders, well, we have preliminary orders in your case with Bell. So it's the same place where Bell's fiber comes from. So right across the street from the town office, you know, that beige building, the CN building, that's CN's telecom building, right?
Yep.
And so under there, that they connect back to the tracks, and you sit on a national corridor of multiple companies that have fiber. Right.
Yes, I know that. I'm just concerned that my last inquiry with Bell was that all of the fiber was bought for our community. Have you researched that?
Yeah, so YRE does a lot of work across Canada, and so we're looking at, I can't recall right at the moment what the reply was for Hornpain availability. I think we have availability in most of the communities. And we're also looking for secondary pricing from the likes of Shaw and whatnot, wherever we can get it. But that is the number one. So it's sign, and then we kick off the process for accessing the fiber. But our first stop would be Bell, in your case, not the
right.
Shaw, their fiber.
My concern would be is that if we don't have any Bell access, if those, if that is all used, and I don't know the exact terminology for this, and then Hornpain is already signed on, and now it changes the look of the agreement if the fiber is not available, if the main fiber is not there. So
it is the risks that we're highlighting, and that is a couple of things actually. It's not to say, so I guess what John was trying to say is, if we check all the boxes and things happen as planned, we can get everything built by next Christmas. But there is the reality of Bell, Shaw, the network in some spots like Wawa that we need to build. That if there's a delay in an MTO permit, if Hydro does something, that is possible that the build cycles spill into the next year. If for some reason it takes too long for a community to sign on, it might spill into next year. So there are those parts of our risk matrix that, yeah, you're right. But at the same time, the good thing, and that's why we're happy partnering with YRE, because they also have Galaxy. So they have satellite assets and a lot of stuff that we're looking at. Also, we do know there's one community we have that's at risk already, and it's Pick-Mobert. So we're looking at high intensity microwave sites that can bring more capacity than we need.
Okay, is that the community, Amedeo, that you were referring to, that all the communities would have fiber except one?
No, that's a very good catch. No, what I meant there was Wawa. So Wawa being about 3,000 or 2,000 addresses, we're not planning to build all of Wawa. It wouldn't make financial sense for the NSRBN to do that. We're going to base that one on demand. Whereas all the other communities are all nicely contained, that it would make sense to go in, do it once to the extent possible. No, there are other communities where, as to your point, that Bell may not be able to provide the gateway service right away. We're looking for contingencies to that as we speak. Again, I didn't pull the data on where we're at with Hornpain, and I certainly will get back to you on that.
Yeah, I think that's imperative for us to know.
Yeah.
Before, like, I would like to be able to provide fiber to our businesses. I've had this discussion at different tables before, and it opens up many doors, but at the same time, we have to make sure we have the source fiber.
Absolutely, 100%.
I'm going to open up the floor again to council. I'm just cognizant of time here and looking, I do have a few more questions. Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Through Mayor, thank you. Amedeo, looking at under, just following up on the mayor's comments, when will the service be rolled out? You have many moving parts. I mean, you need approval from Bell, you need approval from Shaw, MTO, Hydro. I mean, there's many moving parts to sort of fit together in my opinion, a very short time span. Sometimes the ministries don't act quickly as they wish them to act. I speak from experience. So I don't know, your timeline might be a little tight, in my humble opinion.
And that is we know that. We absolutely know that. There's a couple of reasons for us sticking to that. One is we really need to get this project moving. And we feel that if everybody can come on board by the date, because it keeps stretching out, that we can finally get all those orders in and go to permit and do that. With the hope, and we know on a build perspective that we can get it built within that timeline easily. Will there be things that pop up? Absolutely. There may be parts of the build, we may build a half because we'll be held up by an MTO or a rail crossing. We may have to, right, as yourselves, you have several rail crossings. We might be held up by CN by getting underneath. So being, aware of that. But we're also trying to move the puzzle of 9 pieces along. And so our goal is we have to be as realistic as possible, but we have to be right now as aggressive as possible. The other thing too is we're also playing with the government. We're saying to the government, look, we're ready to go. We don't want to wait 3 years to hear if you're going to fund it or not. And because what's going to happen is each community is going to get picked off by these small operators, and you're going to get half service, and then we're really pushing to make sure that Hornpain is bulletproof, it's future-proof, that you have fiber to the prem, fiber to the home, but we need to get going. So absolutely, Councillor, you're right, very aggressive, but we have contingencies built to go around certain things. Some things we just won't be able to avoid, and who knows, we might get a really early snowfall next year, or this year, it's already 2021.
Thank you.
David, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add that Amedeo, actually, we did get a quote from Bell for backhaul from Hornpain, which indicates to us through our partners at YRE that there is some backhaul that's available. So that's a positive that we would be able to provide service in Hornpain.
Okay, thank you for that. Was there any further questions from council? Okay, I don't see anything at this time. I did have one other question and I've lost it. I'll put a question to yourself, Gail. We're going to discuss this and have a resolution prepared for next meeting. Is there any information that you would like me to ask tonight that you would want for that?
Not off the top of my head, but I can review the documents that were provided for the meeting. I forget when it was, but the one that they had invited all council to, and you may have all received that information package as well, and may want to review that because there's quite detailed information in those presentations. So I'd have to review it. I don't have anything right off the top. I think you've covered quite a few points.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gail. I did remember my final question to the team. I'm not sure who could answer it best. If Hornpain was to decide that this would be a good fit for our community, is there a possibility that we could slow that schedule down so that we could incorporate putting fiber in with, say, another service into our ground, or do you have to stick to your schedule? And my follow-up question to that is, do the $5,000 a month fees commence when we have the service?
So I'm going to take the first question, the first part. And sorry, can you sort of explain that a little more for me? So slow it down in what sense?
Yeah, well, if we were to dig into the ground, first of all, we don't want to impede future developments because we have to revitalize roads. We're looking at doing a whole community improvement plan next year. I'm not exactly sure what the community wants and all of that. Then we've learned this lesson already, doing a culvert repair, an expensive and expansive culvert repair where we hit a bell line already and took down some bell. So if we have infrastructure in the ground that could possibly impede upon other things that we're already going to be doing. that's what I was kind of getting at, was that if I'm not sure exactly what our community improvement plan will hold. I'm not sure all the consultation that'll come out from the community, but I don't want us to put in a place where now we have infrastructure that we have to work around, that we could have just waited 6 to 8 months and then it would have been part of the plan.
So I think that's very wise, and I can't. So I'm working with another community where we're talking about the exact same thing, not related to this project, but it's called Dig Once. Basically, it's something that's catching up right across Canada. So I'm working on trying to figure out policies for this community and working around, well, how does that work? For all the reasons you mentioned, I think because you would be a shareholder and a voice at the table, that the team would, we'd work it out together. Obviously there would be the puts and takes. There would be, and David, obviously there would be the financial piece and the planning and all that. But, speaking high level, I think it makes a lot of sense to really, there's cost savings for the project too. So if you're going to open up the ground, better to try to do 2 or 3 things at once, and then it's pennies on the dollar. So at this level, I'd say, yeah, I think it's something we would have to talk about. Because at the same time, we wouldn't want to risk like you said, that the NSRBN fiber gets cut as we're running something down a main corridor, to the extent that we're buried, which we would love to be. And David, I'll let you take the second one. So I'd say that's a yes, that we would stop and talk about the schedule and do all that.
Okay.
I didn't know the financial, but David, if you want to take the second part of the question.
Yeah, so the second part, I would say the financial contribution, it would just be like if you were buying service from another ISP, they couldn't start charging you until they've delivered the service. So if the construction hasn't taken place and service hasn't been provided up to the demarcation point, then revenue, there wouldn't be a charge for revenue.
Okay. And just one other question on that point, David, is so would there be support though, so that our interior, to completely understand what we would need in our interior wiring, or we would be completely on our own to get that set up so that when the fiber is right out our door, we can hook up the next day, that now we're not paying for fiber that we're not using, that there's a delay now because we have to do the inside material stuff to our buildings or what have you?
Yeah, certainly. So I think, there's two sides to that, because you've got the, you'll have the NSRBN team and their project managers working on ensuring that the outside plant and everything can be constructed, as well as, backhaul is connected and available at, the certain points in the various communities. I believe Hornpain is one community that is going to be where we have backhaul situated. So once that's turned up, then ideally the project manager that is on the outside plant work will be communicating with someone within the community who can handle contracting the internal wiring work for each of the municipally owned assets, and making sure that when the fiber is brought in to the demarcation point, hopefully that can all be timed synchronously.
Okay, and just one other, for the backhaul you're talking, that's the fiber where it's coming from, right?
That's the,
like
yeah,
the
so there will
availability
be
of the mass fiber.
Correct. So there will be fiber that we construct throughout the community, and that's known as the distribution network. But we do have to aggregate that at one point and then basically connect into the highway down to one of the major internet exchange points, whether it be Toronto or Chicago or one of those larger cities where all the internet pairing takes place.
Right, and in this case, Mayor, it says yeah, and so in every community, what we're doing is that the equipment hub will be within the town, like your building, right? Because it'll just be a rack. So it'll be the band offices in the community building. And so, how you can see the trench from the CN building across to your telephone pole outside your front door of your office and into, we would follow a similar route from that. There's a cutout on the side of the road. It would be the same. It would come into the building, into your town hall building, into the equipment, and from that point distributes back out to the community. And I think, and this goes back to one of the councillors' questions about the town's involvement in the architecture, of each of the networks, of each of the communities, is as the shareholder, as that, that the brains of the local operation of that main equipment gear will be within the secure location within the town, you know, the administration offices. So find a closet or wherever your telecom room is, it'd be another rack in there. And so that, you know, as part owner, you know, there's also, we know there's the security and that the equipment's in there. And then everything will flow back out to the street and be distributed through the community directly from that point. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And just for final note, this is fiber to the home, right? This isn't fiber to a Wi-Fi or a wireless connection. For Hornpain, we're talking about running fiber up and down the streets, and then there'll be connections. People can connect directly at their cost to the fiber, correct?
So we will bring the fiber right to the side of the house, and then the subscribers can decide yes, and then we'll you know, collectively we light them up in the house. Yeah.
Right.
Fiber
okay.
to fiber to the business.
Okay, go ahead, Gail.
Just being that we're trying to get a new building for ourselves, is it a big problem if we move buildings? Our building's very old and we're looking to find funding to get a new one. So if this gets all set up and then 2 or 3 years or 4 years down the line, we move to another location, is that a huge issue? Because that could very well be.
Well, you know what? That's fantastic information. And I think that's something that we should talk about, because then maybe we decide collectively with you to, you know what, maybe we decide the better solution in Hornpain is we put in like an external facility or a box, you know, somewhere that you own, or we go to a different building that you own that's not going to move. So we'll definitely, you know, you're sitting around the table too on the design. So we're going to be coming back and asking you, you know, what is a secure place that's there for the long run? So that's good information. We just made the assumptions in each community that the town halls are there for the long run. So
yeah,
you might decide a different building, the rec center or something, or the new location.
Okay, great question, Gail. And I'm going to leave one final call for questions for council. Nothing from council? Okay, I'm going to thank you for coming and presenting to us tonight. Council has a regular scheduled meeting on January the 20th when we will discuss this and discuss our motion on that. And of course, we are aware of your deadlines that you do need answers by February 26th. So we will have an answer of whatever that is by that time. I'm sure well aware before that time. But I do want to thank you. I think the presentation went well, and I know that you've been working hard over the past 3 years. So thank you, Melanie, David, and Amedeo for being here tonight in Hornpain virtually. Hopefully we can meet face-to-face sometime as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for all your time.
Thanks for having us, everyone.
Well, any questions, just Melanie, just reach out, and well, Gail and Mary, you know where to find us.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, and you are welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or you can you can leave as well. Don't feel obligated. But okay, thank you, council, for the questions and going through. So we'll be further discussing that on January the 20th. And I will open opportunity now just for council, if there's any direction that you think we need to give Gail so that she can be prepared for our 20th meeting that I'm not readily thinking of. Okay, I'm going to continue on then. So we have a discussion coming up for our community well-being funds. And there was a really good report done by our CAO, a third report on these funds. And I'll open the floor up to Gail if there's anything you want to speak to first about your report, Gail.
The only thing that I might mention is we had briefly talked about the option of municipal service corporation buying into the hotel option or opportunity. And when we rejigged these numbers the other day when we met, we thought, and after speaking with municipal council again, and also Carlo from the HTDC, we were more thinking that if that was going to be something that happened, it might be a better thing to do after the property's been transferred and the MSC can sort of handle that themselves, which would then not require the same amount of funds from the community wellbeing fund. So if you are wondering why that figure has changed for municipal service corporation, that's why. So I don't really have anything else. I think everything was pretty self-explanatory. But I'll certainly speak to it if you have questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Gil. So I'll open the floor up for questions for council about the report and about any, and if there's any suggestions from council themselves on where they feel if there's something missing from the report or other areas that maybe we are that we've taken oversight on and haven't put in the recommendation to put the funds to as well. Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Solid report, Gail and your team. I concur with all the recommendations that are in that report. I read it, analyzed it. I'm behind it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Any further comments from council on the recommendations? Councillor Paroff, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I like it. I like the levy portion, and because it gives us a little still put some away for us for a future date, right? I kind of like that. So I think it's a good report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor Paroff. Okay, I just have a couple of questions. Looking back at going back to the Municipal Service Corp for the opportunity to invest, if it was, if they couldn't generate the funds quick enough to do an investment, would there be a way that we were able to use one of the reserves, like I'm thinking the levy stabilization, to loan the money to them to be able to invest?
I think that would depend. Sorry, I think that would depend on what your policy says, because there'll be policy that goes with all these reserves, right?
Right.
So I think that would be the first thing. And secondly, I think the idea, and Carla can speak to this better than I can, or maybe Belinda, you might be able to. I'm not sure. I'm not a financial person, but it would be more levying the asset itself with the, remember when we were talking last meeting, we were discussing possibly renegotiating loans and such before the sale. And now the thinking is to do so after. And I think you would do it at that time when you're renegotiating and add on to the amount that's being borrowed. So apparently there's some, apparently there's some room there. I guess that's been spoken to previously, not about this particular project, but about another project. So that's my understanding.
Okay, and does that, I guess one question I do have for our next meeting on the 3rd, when we talk about the Municipal Service Corp, is will the Municipal Service Corp's borrowing affect our borrowing? Because we have to stay within a certain percentage of payments.
Separate.
It's separate.
It's separate.
Okay, thank you for that, Gil. Okay, the next question I had was about the Municipal Service Corp startup funds. Are we looking at giving that as a repayment plan? That it's an initial startup, but then they have to repay that back to the municipality?
I think that's up for discussion. I think that's up to council to decide what they'd like to do with that. when we didn't comment on that, but I think that's something that you could discuss on February the 3rd, if that's something that you'd like to see come back.
Okay, so we can leave that portion for, so if council's in agreement to give 50,000 for startup funds, we can discuss that on the 3rd about whether those funds will be brought back to the municipality for some other use.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that could be included then in the documents for establishing the corporation, one of the terms of the agreement.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. I'll go ahead, Belinda.
I
Councillor
just
Kitzmaker.
want to say I was glad to see that the municipal, when you talk about taking the investing of money out, I was happy to see that you did that, because I didn't feel good about that at all. I think anything that with the housing and all that, it should go under that arm's length portion of what we're trying to do with the Municipal Service Corp. I would feel a lot better doing that way, and it doesn't put the township in any kind of situation. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Belinda. And the last comment I had was for the Community Improvement Plan Fund, if we don't end up needing the money for, I just want to go to that part, to actually get the plan created and that the use for that, we can use those fund dollars for matching incentives or that sort of thing with the plan. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's exactly what that's for. We have the money set aside already in the planning dollars separate from this. So this isn't to go towards the plan itself, it's to go towards the incentives, which are to be determined still.
In the plan. So we could, so that 50,000, that could be tripled or something within, because it could be matching that sort of dollars, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm great to hear. Yes, we do have those funds set aside for the actual plan itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions from council on this, on distributing the community well-being dollars? Okay, so Gail, for these 2, 4, 6, 7 items, well, 6 items, I guess, there'll be, or 5, there'll be a policy, they'll follow the policy, like the landfill reserve, we already have a policy for that reserve, correct?
Well, we'll have to delineate what each fund is actually can be used for. You know, you might want to put in there minimums that you want the fund to go down to, or maximums that you want the fund to hold, and the specific uses. So specifically, say for the community improvement plan, you might want to say you're going to do tax relief at whatever it is you decide when the plan is done, and then, like I said, incentives for matching things. You can do loans, and you can do grants to businesses, whatnot. So I think once your plan is developed for that, you would outline that in this policy, and same with the other ones. Whatever it is that you want to cover, so there's no questions asked, just so it's black and white. So
right. I guess
basically just the details.
Yes, I guess my question was more going, I just don't want to hinder us from moving forward because we haven't now created the documents that allow us to use those funds, is basically that, because we will have to create some documents before the use of the funds, correct?
We will, yeah, and I believe Melissa's going to be working on that fairly shortly. And I think she's got some fairly good best practice things to follow. So I mean, I'm not saying it'll be done overnight, but I think she has started thinking about it already. So
yeah,
I think
no, and I'm not saying
too much.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that all about rushing it, because some of these things, like the Economic Development Fund, that can be pushed later because we do have some funds that we're using now. So there will be a process. I realize that. So thank you for that. And hats off to all the staff about that. I'll wrap up for final questions. And if council is in agreement with the recommendation of the use of the Community Well-being Funds. Okay. Okay, so are you looking at passing a resolution at our next meeting then, Gail? or when we do our budget?
I think we're gonna have to do it before the establishment of the Municipal Services Corporation if we want to give this money to this Services Corporation. So maybe I would need to speak with Melissa on it, and as you know, she's not quite back to us yet. So I'm thinking maybe not at the next meeting, but perhaps on the 17th of February.
Okay, but the Municipal Service Corporation's the 3rd, right? Are we talking about that on the 3rd?
It is. You'll have draft documents then to look over for bylaws and various policies and whatnot. So what I'm hoping to do is also, if everybody's okay with those, incorporate changes and pass them as well on the 17th of February.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking in my head. I mean, I haven't spoken to her yet, but because this really is kind of separate from your budget document, it's not coming out of the levy. It shouldn't really matter. Like, it doesn't have to be matched up with that document.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was more concerned because you had said you wanted something passed before we distribute funds to the MSC. So I'm sure council would be in agreement that if we needed a resolution like we did for the hospital, that would be sufficient as well, if council is in agreement with that. If Gail needs that authority. Yes? Yeah, okay. If you need to do that, Gail, you have that option available to you as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think we're done then. I have a confirmatory bylaw. Before, just one comment, Gail, are you going to send out for the NSRB? Will you include those documents that were given at that last meeting? I know I have them.
I think what I'll do is I'll do that tomorrow, if I remember to do it tomorrow, just to send the documents ahead of time, because they're quite lengthy, but I did find they were quite detailed. So yeah, I can do that for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. Okay, council, I have a resolution for a confirmatory bylaw. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Okay, moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1833, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their special meeting of council held on Monday, January 11th, 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and considered read a third time and finally passed. Those in favor? And that is carried. There's none opposed. I'm thinking of summer, I guess. Okay, and if I can get a mover and a seconder to adjourn our meeting this evening. Peter and John. And that's moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that we do adjourn this special meeting of council held on Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 8:09 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Well, it's nice to see everybody and Happy New Year to you all. Bye, everyone.
This conference is no longer being recorded.